Unfortunately, aircraft are remaining on the ground at a certain airline. Another new company confirms its launch later this year, and a peculiar one, which is where I'd like to begin. Sri Lankan Airlines is seeking substantial compensation from Airbus, which would include next-generation A330neos. The catch? At no cost. The airline believes that financial compensation from the European plane maker is required, and is going so far as to demand the return of USD 23.3 million in pre-delivery repayments. Additionally, they're seeking compensation of upwards of USD 200 million, including the delivery of up to 4 A330neos, for which, just to confirm again, no charges would be incurred on. Sri Lankan Airlines holds this view due to the challenges it faced in acquiring A330-300s and A350-900s in its recent history. Only part of that deal eventuated, and this was thanks to the support of global lessors. This significant deal for wide-body planes was initially announced in 2013, and if we're taking a look at specific units, saw 6 A330-300s and 4 of the A350-900 jets included. Still, however, corruption and other obstacles prevented the deal from working out maybe as initially intended. These requests, stemming from the airline's complex history, have raised alarm bells industry-wide and left Airbus pondering what's next with this customer. Much of the airline's pursuit of this compensation is driven by the newly appointed chairman of Sri Lankan Airlines, who is adamant that what is rightfully the airline's will be reclaimed, and this does include funds and damages that have occurred across its recent time. Away from struggles with Airbus, the company is also entering negotiations with Rolls-Royce. This key engine manufacturer played a role in all of these circumstances, which were deemed internally at Sri Lankan Airlines as far from ideal. For the Colombo-based company, its history has been, well, complex, with corruption, like I've said time and time again, playing a major role in recent years. Moreover, as we see continued political unrest to be a prevalent part of the company's day-to-day dealings, it remains an airline in a far from optimal state. Adjustments to the airline's senior leadership have also been a common occurrence, with the high-ranking CEO position currently left unfilled as searches continue and get narrowed down for a replacement. Now, a strained relationship with Airbus is occupying headlines as the company faces yet another struggle to overcome, but if achieved, well, compensation they feel would be necessary for the rebuilding efforts. Remember, this is something they still need to secure. Corruption will also continue remaining a pretty hefty focus, with past findings showing the airline accepted bribes to take on Airbus planes at prices far above the list value, especially when significant discounts, you have to remember, are handed down to airlines, and they will never pay full list price value. Keen to hear your take on that. Are their demands maybe completely out of reach? Let me know. Over to Air New Zealand, who have provided an update on their full earnings guidance, and as such have really focused in on aircraft groundings. Since last commentary from the airline, they've been able to secure additional leased engines and one further owned spare engine to try and stabilise ongoing problems. However, Air New Zealand states that it expects the number of aircraft on the ground to remain high, with 11 jets currently grounded. The airline is still negotiating with engine makers to find ways to mitigate concerns and challenges. The negotiations also focus on the importance of securing compensation for unserviceable engines and the inaccurate timeframes that are being provided for solutions to be found. While engine woes and engine complexities remain challenging at the best of times, a great deal of frustration for airlines centers around the inability to understand when these problems will cease. Time and time again, airlines such as Air New Zealand have believed a corner had been turned and improvement was being made on the global supply chains, only for the work to be undone seemingly and 2 steps taken back. Air New Zealand has also made it clear that the compensation received may not directly reflect the total number of planes on the ground. This is partly due to the definition of off-wing engines. See, the flag carrier says that in the past, the framework of compensation has centered around the flexibility of certain engine states that were not usable or in commercial service, being treated as unserviceable and therefore resulting in compensation to the company. However, this component was introduced despite Air New Zealand retaining the engines engines to facilitate, say, the repositioning of stored aircraft. This flexibility now ending, according to the airline. It makes decisions more difficult and will result in lower compensation output for the second half of the year, something that the airline needs to keep in mind. What is happening at this company? Well, it's been a tough decade, with several instances where aircraft have been grounded, and now in 2025 that continues to be an ongoing problem. Those ongoing problems stem from an engine supply chain crisis, which has resulted in a lack of available spare parts and maintenance windows being substantially extended beyond what was initially put forward. As a result, Air New Zealand has had to keep planes on the ground, not just single aisle but also its wide-body portfolio, affecting its ability to continue operating what it would feel is a stable network. Whether it ranges from short-haul domestic flying to long-haul international services, that network has been fractured, with capacity cuts occurring as a result. In fact, we've gone as far as seeing international routes be suspended for a period of time as a result of Air New Zealand's inability to maintain the service as it would intend. Over to the final story, and that sits with Riyadh Air, who have confirmed their intention to launch before the end of 2025 as preparations intensify. The carrier is hoping for a late Q4 launch and the delivery of 2 787 Dreamliners before the end of the year to make all of this happen, according to Tony Douglas speaking to Aviation Week. Riyadh Air is, to reaffirm, all but cleared for takeoff after obtaining its air operator's certificate. The flight testing campaign, which began in September 2024, saw many flights take place after permission was granted for non-commercial services to operate from Riyadh to nearby locations to really prove that Riyadh Air has what it takes to launch, and that is now what it has. However, its launch has been complicated. On several occasions, they've been forced to delay that, primarily stemming from the inability to take on 787 jets, which are crucial to launching. Previously, they'd been targeting a highly anticipated launch around the midpoint of the 2025 year, which was then deemed impossible, and even Q3 was unattainable. However, they believe, like I said, that 2 787 Dreamliners will be delivered this year, and as a result, they should be able to get operations up and running before next year. The announcement of the airline's launch being reaffirmed for really a time frame follows a landmark unveiling of the interior cabin, which is something that's been long speculated. For too long, we've heard Riyadh Air is going to try and change the game, but also find a means to have a comfortable cabin class while at the same time being affordable. That is a very fine margin between achieving both of those things. The state-of-the-art interior will see business class in a 1:1 layout measuring 78 inches and 22.5 inches in width. There'll be a large 4K OLED screen in every seat, but a 32-inch screen in business will be the largest in the world. Business Elite, meanwhile, will be 4 seats, with their more standard business class having 24. With your 52-inch high walls and a sliding privacy door, Riyadh Air is trying to create a space that feels like your own, certainly following trends that we have seen across recent times, which has prioritized privacy. Their premium economy will be in a 232 with 39 seats to accommodate passengers, and towards the back of the plane you'll have 223 seats in economy class in a 333 layout. That means 290 passengers will be able to jump on board their 787-9s. That'll conclude today's industry recap. Thanks a lot for watching. Please take care, do be safe, and I'll see you tomorrow for your next recap.
And we'll fly.